Hi, everyone. I'm excited to be here today to talk to you about some of the miracle stories that are happening right here in our own city, in our own state, every day. My name is Tony Kausha, and the title of our show is Tony's 50,000 Coincidence Miracles. Please note, this show is not about religion, and we're not trying to change anyone's religion, and we're not trying to get you to join any religion. It's just about miracle stories. I don't know of any religion on the planet that doesn't talk about miracles. That's why religions begin, because they have something that's telling them there's really a God. But we're not going to get into that. We're going to just talk about miracles and leave the decisions about all that up to you. So we don't care what religion you are. We just want to talk about miracles. If you are an atheist, I think you'll enjoy the program as well, although I can't guarantee you'll remain an atheist very long after you hear many convincing stories, coincidence kinds of stories about miracles. You can email me your own stories if you wish. We'll try to use all we can on the show. I can't guarantee we will, depending on volume and time, but you're welcome to send your stories on to us, and we will mention them when we can. You can send them to the following email address. But please notice that if we do use your story, we won't mention your name. We'll keep you anonymous. And we suggest that in your story, when you send it to us, don't use your correct name. That way anyone listening will not be able to figure out that it was you that sent the story in. The email address you can send your stories to is very easy to remember. It consists of 2 words and 3 numbers. The first word is Tony, spelled Tony, and the second word is and, spelled A-N-D, and the numbers are 777. So once again, the name is Tony and 777 at AOL.com. Well, let us begin. Our first miracle story today is something that happened to me. I was planning to go to Mass one morning, and as I was getting ready to go, I got inspired to go to a different church than I had intended to. So instead of going to the normal church I was normally planning to go to, I got inspired to go to a different church. So I did. And what that causes, obviously, is there's a different priest and a different message. They read the same scriptures from the Bible, but their homilies, their lectures would be different because it's a different priest at the different church. So I got there, and I was amazed what happened. While the priest was giving his homily and his lecture, he commented that he was inspired to break off from where he was in his lecture and cover something that just occurred to him. And so he shared a wonderful story about another homily he was giving one day, and how a couple that were there at the church listening to that homily on that particular day, that couple had produced a book, a spiritual book, and they went up to him after Mass and explained how they were deeply moved, that he explained one of the points in their book that they were trying to convey to a lot of people, and they were so delighted that he was covering that at their church, and the message was reaching people. And so they had a nice discussion, all 3 of them, about where they got the inspiration from and their life experiences with this message. And the essence of the message was that if people don't share their miracle stories when they get them, if they don't share them with other people don't get blessed by it. And as the Bible tells us, glorify God. Glorify Him audibly. The Bible expects us and teaches us that when you're stunned by a miracle and you're so extremely blessed by a miracle from God, you should want to tell the whole world about it. And if you don't want to tell the whole world about it, there's got to be something wrong with the process. You're getting a wonderful gift from God, you're ecstatic and you're happy, and you're not telling anybody about it. And so they shared the fact that in the book of Matthew, in the Bible, in the book of Matthew, chapter 13, Jesus says that those who don't have won't be given more, and those who do have will be given more. And that alludes to the fact that, if you don't have faith and joy and happiness in receiving gifts from God, the chances are you're going to stop getting them. So you could read Matthew chapter 13 for yourself, but that's the connotation there. And I was so delighted and ecstatic because on the prior day, I had delivered that same message on the radio. It was one of my talks also in one of our past radio shows, alluding to the fact that, if we aren't doing what God intends, do His will, He wants us to publicize, He wants us to go out and tell the good news, tell the whole world the good news. Well, what is the good news? It's multitudes of miracles that we've experienced. That's the great, fantastic news. And what does that mean? Well, the multitudes of miracles mean that God actually loves us, actually doing great things for us and with us. And that's great, fantastic news, and it confirms the meaning of the Bible. In other words, it confirms the truth of the Bible, because the miracles we're experiencing today are happening to us because we believe and we're practicing what the Bible has told us to do. So the miracles are the confirmation, the evidence, and the proof that the Bible is true and the story of God is true. You may remember that one of our weekly shows I explained how, without preaching religions and telling people what religion to belong to, I mentioned to people that a very helpful way for you to communicate with God and experience the presence of God is to go to an empty church. Find an empty church somewhere in your city and go in there, because the ambience, the structure of the church, the flowers, the pictures, stained glass windows, all of those things, the ambience puts us in the mood, so to speak, and gets us into a reverent mood. That's what churches are built that way. They're constructed for us to be mindful of God and have some awe, some reverence for this higher, greater power. That's why churches are built to be beautiful, because we should walk into the church and realize we're in a beautiful place because we've come to talk to a beautiful God. So it's very helpful to do that. And many people who have trouble praying and getting into the mood of praying or getting to sense God's presence are having that problem because they're not into a place that's peaceful, quiet, the ambience. If you're trying to pray and experience the presence of God at some loud event where loud music is being played and a lot of voices are high-pitched, etc., and you're trying to notice the presence of God. Psalm 46:10 says, "Be still." Psalm 46, verse 10 says, "Be still and know that I'm God." So when we're talking to God, we need to be reverent, we need to be respectful, etc. So I had that on one of our radio shows. I explained it, and I just make mention now that night when I got home, I was reading the Word Among Us magazine. It's a pretty famous magazine, and they have daily meditations in there. So I was reading that day's meditation, and when I opened it to the day and read about it, that magazine was explaining the same exact thing. So that was another coincidence miracle. It did happen to me, but I thought I would share it with you, and hopefully you'll get some benefit out of that message as well. Our next story is about a wonderful minister that I heard giving a lecture recently that helps us to try to understand coincidence miracles and how coincidence miracles speak to our souls and speak to our minds and how we notice God in coincidence miracles. So I'm going to hopefully do a good job here explaining, but I was personally deeply impressed by his lecture. And here's what he said, and I don't have every word perfectly, but I hope I convey his message well. He was explaining how a baby, an infant, when they're first born, they get a lot of love from their mother, obviously. And over time, the infant starts to notice the smile and the twinkle in an eye of the mother. So the infant begins to notice. They're not communicating verbally, but the infant starts noticing certain things: the sound of the mom's voice, the blink in her eye, the twinkle in her eye, the pace, how fast she moves. Is she anxious when she's doing things, or is she very peaceful? And so the infant begins to take readings and messages and communication from the mother. I guess if the mother's frantic, the infant begins to notice that. when the baby is not when the mother is not frantic and very loving. Maybe she's humming a song or she's rocking the baby to sleep or whatever. So the minister was making the point that an infant gets to notice the love or the hatred or the respect or the disrespect of the mother by perceiving the activity that is happening. And then the minister explains that God also sends us clues and sends us messages and sends us inspirations and sends us ideas. I mean, while I was listening to this minister, I was like a candle melting, because he was saying all of the right things for me, confirming our radio shows where we talk about coincidence miracles and how the coincidences that God sends us is like God's twinkle in his eye and his smile and his happiness with us, etc., etc. So the more coincidence miracles that we notice, the more we notice the love of God in our life. Just like an infant notices the love of the mother by the infant who can't communicate verbally, but the infant is noticing the inflection of the mother's voice, etc., etc. So I hope that helps you, that God is revealing to us his love in the twinkle in his eye and his love for us and his movement toward us by the coincidence miracles that we receive. Our next story is from a listener who has been listening to our show for a while, and they relate to us that they decided to start talking to God more often about things, asking God before they make decisions. And on the way home one day, they asked God, to inspire them with thoughts and ideas. And the first idea they got was to stop and pick up some milk. So they remembered they had to buy some milk, which, you can ask God for inspirations. And if you get a thought right away reminding you forgot that you were supposed to pick up milk or whatever, that's God helping you. He's giving you the inspiration. And that's how God talks to us, with inspiration and ideas. And so he stopped to pick up the milk, and he says that when he was walking to his car, to get back in his car now and get back on the road, he noticed that a car had parked next to him with a license plate number 555. And he remembers from our show that 3 5s means the presence of God, the grace of God. So he couldn't wait to let us know about it, and I hope he's listening in today. Our next story is from someone who was driving back home from work. They left the office, they got into their car, and there was some mail on the dashboard they had gotten recently and didn't read yet, so they got inspired to read the mail before they started the car and took off to come home. And they spent some time reading the mail. When they finished, they started the car up and started to travel back home. And they said they pulled out of the driveway, and the first car they saw as they pulled out of the driveway was a car with a license plate number 777. And I know this has happened to me several times in my life. You're delayed a few moments, and that delay helps you to pull your car out, and you notice 3 7s or 3 5s, etc. So following God's inspirations is the key. Asking God what to do and trusting the ideas you get and the inspirations you get once you ask him what to do is him responding to you. So you say, God, please inspire me. Please give me ideas all day long, Lord. I give you permission to give me ideas all day long, and then these kinds of things happen. And when you see these holy numbers, those are clues from God that he's sending you little Morse code signals. Numbers, God can use numbers like Morse code, and when you see holy numbers like 3 5s, 3 3s, 3 7s, those are clues that God is sending you certainly car license plates at the right moment. You'll notice them. If you start looking, most people will tell you, if you start looking, you'll see a lot of holy numbers. God bless you all. I'll talk to you next week.